Welcome to our May Procurement Talk. Super excited to have our new group of panelists and moderator with us today. This is an event series a team of us started a couple years ago. We used to do them in person around the country, and it was such a success that we decided to do it again last year. And then COVID hit and we said, hey, we're going to pivot, and we decided to do these monthly now. And each month we bring a different group of thought leaders in the procurement and supply chain space together to collaborate and share ideas, as well as a different moderator, someone who's really innovative and doing some unique things in the industry. I want to start off by giving each of our sponsors a minute or so to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about how they're innovating in the procurement space. And a big thank you to all of our sponsors. They allow us to host this series at no cost, which is a really great way, again, for our community to collaborate and come together. So Eric, I am going to start off with you and the blue background.
Yeah, sorry for the ugly blue background, but I forgot I had it as a default. But nevertheless, thanks, Sarah, and to the panelists and everyone joining today. Rapid Ratings, excuse me, is proud to be a sponsor of the 2021 Procurement Talks. And so Rapid Ratings is a SaaS-based system enabling financial health, transparency, and predictive insights between procurement or supply chain risk managers and their suppliers. And so we are transforming the way teams manage enterprise and financial risk on both public and private companies. We're unique because we source the financial statements for private company suppliers directly from over 150 plus countries on behalf of our clients. And so we've been really busy over the last year helping our clients mitigate risk stemming from the impact of COVID-19 by leveraging our deep analysis and doing some stress testing on their suppliers. So enjoy today's panel, and I'm sure you'll get some really good lessons learned.
Awesome, Eric. And it sounds like it's kind of cold and chilly in New York. It's going to be 90 degrees here in Danville.
I'm so jealous. Yes, we're lucky if hopefully there's no more snow in the forecast, but it's definitely windy.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for being such a great sponsor of our event series.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ken joining us from SoCal. Looks like it's kind of sunny and warm there today.
Yep, it is perfect golf weather, so I cannot disagree with you on that. Won't be as hot as 90, but at least I don't have to worry about snow like Eric does, so that's good. So, hey everyone, this is Ken Boehmrecher, Worldwide Services. We are an IT infrastructure maintenance solution company here. We provide basically instant savings when you're looking to have some support. Sorry, the dogs are in the background, if you can hear them. If you have instant support on your IT networks, such as your routers, servers, storage, things that are in the network that are end of life or end of service, that you basically want to keep going and don't need to run back to the OEM and get the new latest and greatest cutting edge. That's where we come in and help play. So hopefully we can meet after this on LinkedIn, or hopefully meet in person, but just wanted to say hi and thanks for having us and thanks for doing this, Sarah, again.
Awesome, Ken. Thanks so much for being with us and looking forward to finally seeing you in person next month. Very exciting.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Manish, wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you. So I'm speaking to you guys from India. I'll start off quickly by saying what you're reading in news in India is true, but I would also say blame the journalist for creating the anxiety and misrepresenting some of the information. So I am Manish Senta, Managing Director, TechWise Group. Usually I live in Michigan, but I'm in India since February, just spending time with family and staying home. As a company, we are a global workforce solution provider that helps clients in technology and workforce planning across 7 countries. We have a huge operation that runs in India. So I thought, well, I can stay with my parents and work from India office. Didn't plan for the second wave of COVID. So I'm just waiting till things settle down and I can come back to US.
And Manish, are all the brothers in India with you as well? Manish and his brothers all run the company together.
You know, it's coincidental, but I have to tell you just a quick side story. I have two older brothers, so we are three boys in the family. And my mom is the happiest to have all the three boys under the same roof, because that rarely happens, because we all have our own life that's pretty much coincides with other things. So out of all the COVID fiasco, the thing that my mom is really happy that all the boys are under the same roof.
And you always wear matching outfits. So I miss seeing the suits and socks and shoes.
I will, when the panel kick starts, I'm going to share a Bitmoji with all the men can relate to it. I don't know about the women, but I'll share that and I'll let you guys have a good laugh on that. It'll just resonate with the suit, why we are not wearing suits anymore since COVID had its own effect.
All right, Manish, well, so glad you are safe, and thank you for being here and for sponsoring the series. All right, next up we have Tim. Tim is one of our brand new sponsors. Jagger decided to join the PTalk group, so super excited to have Tim with us today. So Tim, if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what Jagger's doing to innovate in the space.
Hey, Sarah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you are good.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having us today. Real pleasure to be here. Again, my name's Tim Johnson, representing Jagger. Really, here at Jagger, our vision is procurement simplified, and we have a host of procurement and supply chain tools. Really, what we're focused on is engaging our platform with embedded analytics, mainly our Jagger One platform with different strategic approaches to track functionality, help encourage utilization, improve effectiveness, and overall drive value, savings, and adoption for the organization and our customers. So real pleasure to be here. And if anybody's interested to learn more, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me a message.
Awesome, Tim. Well, thank you so much for being here. Alrighty, so a couple housekeeping notes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ernie, who is going to kick off the panel discussion. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a chat function. So feel free to put comments. We like to keep it fun and engaging. So do not hold back. Don't be shy. Put any notes or funny things that you'd like to share there. Us and myself and the sponsors and panelists will be monitoring and managing that throughout. And then we also have a Q&A function at the bottom. So if you have a question for one of the panelists or a general question that you would like Ernie to ask, please put that in the Q&A, and Ernie will make sure to monitor and manage those throughout the conversation today. So with that, I am going to introduce Ernie. Ernie is a very, very dear friend and super excited to have him with us today. So a couple fun facts about Ernie before we get started. He is passionate about disruptive innovation for investing and national security. And he is an Elon Musk fanboy. So if anybody knows Ernie, he's all things Elon Musk. Check out his Facebook, check out his LinkedIn. He even mentioned they did a Saturday Night Live skit this last week that I need to check out. So if you love Elon Musk, make sure to connect with Ernie on that. He is a lifelong soldier in uniform for 39 years and continuing, a recovering engineer and scholar warrior, and a faculty member of the U.S. Army War College. And he's a competitive sports pedestrian, proficiency in Tang So Do, Chuck Norris rules. So with that, Ernie, I'm going to pass it over to you if you want to introduce yourself and then kick off the panel for today.
I thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks, Sarah, and thank you to the sponsors for this opportunity. I am honored, truly honored to moderate such an intriguing set of panelists. I did check out our panelists in the last few days and have a bunch of questions that I want to ask them. We're going to talk about all kind of stuff like business value, balance of what we do in procurement, what are the right levers to use and when, things like that, celebrating diversity, a lot of great topics that hopefully we'll get to cover all those things. But before that, I would like to start off with some self-introductions. Going to go around the stage, starting with Rachel, please. Rachel, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Super happy to be here. My name is Rachel Hassel. I'm the Global Procurement Director responsible for lifestyle brands at SEJ globally. I'm leading procurement operations for your favorite brands like Mrs. Meyer's, Method, Baby Ganix, Ecover. I have a background in package engineering, and I've been working in the CPG space for about 12 years, with the last 8 years being in procurement. I believe fully that procurement is the enablement function for any business. I'm a huge lover of brands, and I'm inspired by brands that are on a mission and inspired by how to bring those to life. On the personal side, I am a competitive power lifter. My next meet after having baby number 2, we're looking to get a 300-pound squat, 200-pound bench press, and about a 400-pound deadlift. So those are the targets. I'm a huge lover of coffee, and I'm a mom. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Again, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to listen to all these panelists. And Ernie, my question is what's your favorite Elon Musk fact? I need to know, if you're that big of a fan, like, what's your favorite fact?
You know what was so interesting was that he acknowledged on Saturday Night Live in the monologue that he has Asperger's. So I was fascinated by that. I always thought he was kind of adorably awkward, but now that it kind of makes sense. That was a fun fact to learn about him, and I think it was good for him to acknowledge that. I mean, look at the now second richest person in the world with that, challenge in his life. So it just goes to show you embrace your strengths, and you are aware of your weaknesses, and you will always be successful with that. So what a fascinating, Rachel, I love the quote, procurement's the enablement for business. What an interesting background, coffee lover and a power lifter. I don't want to get you angry. So let's continue the introductions. Audrey, please introduce yourself.
All right. Very excited to be here on my first sort of upping the ante and with my good friend Sarah's invitation. My name is Audrey Ross. I am a logistics and customs specialist at Orchard Custom Beauty, which is an award-winning private labeling company that specializes in cosmetics, beauty tools, beauty accessories. We do a ton of packaging and print. So, Sarah and I have that in common. What else? I'm a huge coffee drinker, so I was excited that Rachel and I are coffee buddies. And I'm up here in Toronto, Canada. And yeah, I don't know. I've been with the company for about 16 years. I started as a summer student, and I just kind of learned my way around. So I got to do quite a bit of procurement sort of in my earlier days. And it's great because it really helps you when I moved into logistics and supply chain, managing supplier relationships. I got such a great foundation at Orchard with managing factories and sort of project management and that, kind of classic procurement piece. But it stays with you. It's something that you don't forget. So very excited to be here and looking forward to hearing from the other panelists, Neha and Lewis and Rachel. Thanks, Ernie.
Thank you, Audrey. Thanks for that introduction. And a couple of things from your profile on LinkedIn I enjoyed. You're a self-described trade geek. I think that was cool. And the other thing that's in your profile is that you elegantly translate mundane details into beautiful results. I love that. Yeah. Your background in beauty and fashion is fascinating. Look forward to continue this conversation. So next on the going through the introductions, let's hear from Shneha, please. Shneha, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ernie. I would like to first start with thanking Sarah, RSN, and all the sponsors for having me here. This is going to be a lovely discussion, and alongside my favorite panelists. So very glad to actually see you in person. I've seen Audrey before, but not Louise and Rachel. I saw you once before. But quick introduction, I have a decade of experience in supply chain, which includes procurement and tactical supply chains, which is inventory management, logistics, and also operation side as well, mostly in manufacturing and energy industry. So Audrey, I am a huge fan of fashion because that's my weak point. So I'm looking forward to learning more from you and your experiences. Procurement, according to me, is a huge enabler when it comes to, it's a skill required wherever you go in terms of whether you're in logistics, you're dealing with your forwarders and your carriers, which are kind of your suppliers. So I think that skill really, I started my career in procurement. And so that skill has really helped me and actually, propelled every discussion that I've had in the projects that I have ran. So I think it's a key enabler in every function that you are in. And I am a huge fan and advocate of circular supply chain and economy. So we are going to talk about how procurement is a huge enabler and moving from linear to circular supply chains. I'm looking forward to that. Apart from that, a mom of two boys, two hyper boys, which really needs my energy to be up. You could, with a 7-month-old in my house, I haven't slept for a long time. So really, if you ask me for my hobby right now, I need sleep, a day off doing nothing. No coffee for me, because as you can imagine, the boys are enough for my energy to keep going. And well, I'm looking forward to this discussion today and learning from all of you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you for that introduction, Shneha. Thanks for reminding me. Happy Mother's Day, belated Mother's Day. That's the hardest job and most wonderful job in the world. And thank you for that. So looking forward to talking to you about the circular supply chain. I'm fascinated by that in your profile as well. So thank you for that introduction. And last but not least, let's hear from Luis. Please introduce yourself, Luis.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Louis Bastone. As of right now, professionally, I'm a, procurement category manager for a large technology company, Netherlands-based company called ASML. We're pretty much responsible for the most significant portion of a fab machine, of a semiconductor fab in general. So we sell into your Samsungs, your Intels, your TSMCs. The operation itself is very technical, but I am on the indirect procurement side. I manage all of our facilities management, which includes utilities, site services, and construction across the US, which is 16 different sites, all ranging from, it can be 20 FTEs in a site to 2,500 FTEs in a site. So it's a little all over the place, but it is very interesting all across the US, so all in different states, are close to $500 million in spend a year. So it's a pretty good amount of spend. So I'm a huge procurement nerd, anyone who knows me. I love procurement. I'm currently writing a book on procurement. I have tried to study every single procurement person that is significant that I've ever, gotten to hear about or learn about. I really like to ingrain myself in the profession. I'm very excited to be part of the profession every day. So I'm very excited for this talk. Very excited. I'm not overly familiar with everyone on the panel, so I'm excited to hear everybody's input. I'll be as much of a listener as I am a talker for sure. And then on the personal side, big MMA fan, whether it's practicing it or watching it. MMA is just really fun. It's a good outlet, helps with discipline, just helps, in the physical outlet after we're burning our brains out from procurement throughout the day. I know Ernie, you liked that I mentioned chess, so I do like playing chess, but I never really have anyone to play chess with, so I don't really get to play as much as I would like to. And yeah, just being outdoors, hiking, just learning new things. Yeah, it's exciting to be here, and I'm very excited to be part of the panel. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Louis. I appreciate that, your introduction. I love your passion. I see from your profile, you're also interested in sustainability, taking the sustainment procurement pledge. I want to hear some about that maybe in one of the questions. Maybe we can get to that. Also fascinated by your interest in both chess and MMA. There, believe it or not, others may not know there's such similarities between the two. You know, in MMA, you have a lot of grappling ground arts where it's just like chess. It's for every move, there's a counter move. So maybe there's some similarities in procurement with that as well. So look forward to continuing that conversation. So thanks for that introduction. Let's jump right to it. I think we have about 45 minutes or so, and there's just a lot of questions I want to get to. I want to start with Shneha, please. Looking at your background, your profile shows this passion for sustainability. You mentioned it a little bit. We talked about it a little bit. Passion for sustainability, ideas such as converting waste streams into value streams, and innovating. And I'm curious, what are some of the benefits that you see to the business and how procurement can be a big enabler to shift from this linear supply chain to a circular supply chain?
For sure. Let's start this. I like to start my discussions whenever it comes to circular supply chains to understand it on how we are positioned now and where exactly we should be going when we are thinking circular. So right now, most of our supply chains is really based on a take, make, and waste model. So that's a pretty linear model. There are some level of bringing, reverse logistics and bring stuff back, but bring your products back. But there isn't a lot of focus on actually using that waste that comes out of each process and turning them as value. Coming from manufacturing, lean has been a part of my day-to-day job a lot. And so lean usually talks about how you eliminate waste. And, I turn that to circularity, where circular supply chains is about monetizing waste. So actually turning your waste into value. A waste from one industry serves as an input to either your industry, some process, or someone else. And it could be multiple, there are multiple ways of doing that. You either use materials, recycle them, refurbish them, there are some processes that remanufacture, repair. There's a lot of processes that could actually make that happen. But how procurement really enables this is actually designing. So, there is a step where you have your products, you have some waste, you either bringing back from your customers, you recycle it. And also recyclability is also a different topic, which we can discuss later. But actually designing your products in a way that it becomes, that it extends its life. And even after it's, it's in a product shape, and it's probably reached at its end of life, it still is usable by some other industries or some other processes, is something that circular supply chain really propagates and talks about. Now, procurement is very essential and is a key enabler here, because we start there. We start at the birth of products. So we are talking, when we are procuring and talking to our suppliers, bringing our products, working with the design teams, that's exactly where we collaborate with our suppliers, our vendors, and change our designs accordingly, and then enable this whole process in a way that we are able to bring products back, extend their life, remanufacture, recycle products at the same time. So it starts with procurement, and throughout the process, with procurement being able to collaborate with multiple functions and their supply chain, really would enable the value that we see from all the raw materials or components that you are using to make your finished goods. Now, from the benefits that you really wanted to focus on. So, of course, the first and foremost benefit is we are living and working right now in this era with finite resources. It is very important that we realize the value that this is a fact. So, the resources that we have been using and wasting for so long isn't going to stay with us forever. So just starting that thought process and taking baby steps towards this is the need of the hour. We need to now run, not walk. I mean, walking the talk is we are already late to the game right now. The benefits, of course, is the value that we are, gonna add to our environment, because circular is not just about recycling, it's also being about regenerative. So once we are working with inputs that actually will be regenerative and will add value at the end of the life to the mother nature. So that's something, again, where procurement is going to add value. But the second part is also when I said it is about monetizing waste. So it also creates economic value streams, economic opportunities for businesses around. And, at some point, I also believe that your components, if you are working with secondary inputs and not virgin inputs, your costs will go down too. So, when right now our focus in procurement is about cost and, finding the lowest cost and cheapest component, I strongly believe that the whole strategy needs a generational shift, and where we are talking about how to bring circular design as one of the key strategy when it comes to procurement, which eventually will lead to lower costs. Finding that industry base, finding that secondary inputs that we can bring back to our processes is something that is a strategic shift that I strongly believe in, I want to propagate.
I love it. I love it. Your passion comes out so much, Sneha, that you talked about a paradigm shift from eliminating, what Lean Six Sigma talks about, eliminating waste, to then using the waste, regenerative, and more impactful probably is the monetizing that part of it. So very, very intriguing. We could probably have an hour discussion on that, but we'll move on from there. Let's go to our next panelist. I want to go to Audrey. One of your passions, or I should say one of my passions, is disruptive innovation that drives breakthrough value. And you operate in a well-established field of logistics and imports and customs management. So I'm curious about what is it in that field of logistics and customs that is trending right now, that could provide some innovative value or some opportunities for new process, et cetera?
For sure. It's such a great question. And it's such, when you think about logistics and customs, they're very old industries. I mean, these are, customs clearance and, global shipping, has been around just for centuries. And so I think the key thing that we've noticed, that the industry notices, and I think that your everyday employee who's working in it and your everyday consumer notices, is now that we have all of this access to smartphone technology and to see things in our hand, it becomes very difficult to justify things that aren't efficient or things that don't work that well, or the idea that we hear across a lot of industries, but especially in supply chain, we've always done it this way. And I think this is really this sort of 2020, this next decade. We've really seen this smartphone boom and this technological boom. We're trying to move away, from spreadsheets and from Excel and kind of getting into the next level. And we've had this sort of, maybe decade or 2 decades of modulating into new technologies. And I think this next decade and beyond is really going to see, and the pandemic has shifted this too. You're on this precipice of new technologies, but you're just so tired of some of the just consistent pain points that you're like, I can't stand this. We need to kind of get over this ledge or this hurdle. And some of those examples, for me, it takes, a proof of delivery and logistics still can take more than a week to get. And it's like, how, if you have a smartphone, how have you not equipped your drivers to be able to send this? So it's little things like that it's just, after being through a pandemic or after now having this fingertip access to technology, there's these things that you're just like, this is completely intolerable to me, so you have to see a change in this. And part of the challenge of that is that because things are global and we've all been we've all been born and raised and live and operate in different countries, sometimes we forget that we've all created these rules as countries, but we're trying to operate globally and have it be seamless. And so for something like customs, if each country has a different process or a different standard, then it makes it very difficult for people to operate globally. And some things, you know, when you travel personally, you know, it's fairly common what the rules are. You know, you have to present your passport, you have to go, you know, when you buy something, you have to present it. So that's fairly common in every country. But some of the rules in commercial business, they're just not standardized. So even things like creating more standardization using these digital tools is just, it's on the horizon, but I think we're going to see that push forward because people are just, it's just become like kind of intolerable. And it, to have everything based on like a nationalized, you know, kind of thought process, it just doesn't work for people anymore. So it's, for me, it's a very interesting space to get into. You know, the concept of just actually having a global business where we sort of are reducing borders. And yet over the past 5 to 10 years, we've seen, you know, and even in some new administrations, we've seen it's like, oh, we're going to buy, you know, I think there's a difference from buying local, shopping local, and supporting local versus nationalizing and creating barriers to the global world. So that's sort of where I'm at on it. I think if we can see, you know, some standardization, some more collaboration across the board, you know, and just really making an effort to reduce some of those, you know, really sticky pain points that, you know, we can really forge ahead here.
Great points. Thanks for that, Audrey. It's true that there's been a lot of technological advances, and the logistics, particularly the international logistics space, is such a, I don't know, it's probably, you know, one of the oldest categories to manage there's been some recent advancements, but there's a lot of opportunity there. So I appreciate your comments. Let's move on to Rachel. I want to talk a little bit about this value that Audrey and Shaniha mentioned a little bit. We often talk about value when in procurement. So I wanted to get your thoughts, Rachel, on what does value mean to you and your organization, and how does your team work to secure and deliver that value?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I think like most people this last year, the definition of value has changed dramatically, right? Working in CPG, specifically making soap, right? Value has changed in definition. And when we look at massive disruptions to supply chains, spikes in demand for critical components, commodity surges, force majeures impacting raw materials across the board, global impacts to logistics. All of these have really come to define value for me and my organization as resiliency. That is what value is right now. So whether that's looking at secondary supply, surge capacity, approved alternatives, ability to get prioritization amongst your suppliers, all of this is really, really key in delivering value for our organization outside of I'll say simple cost, the dollar on the spreadsheet, right? So when this all really kicked off for us, I think I was 2 weeks back from maternity leave, and our office got shut down, and we really kicked into hyperdrive. And we did an activity to really map out all of the potential supply risks, and having that strategic alignment across the organization from supply chain to R&D, we mapped out any of the risks and where we didn't have resiliency. Working for a company which is situated on eco-friendly home and personal care products, we can't just switch from one alternative to another. It has to align to our mission. And so resiliency has been a key topic of conversation. So we set off to secure hand wash pumps. We knew we could do that really quick. We jumped on placing POs immediately. We started qualifying new green alternatives for chemicals that we thought were at risk. So really mapping out that resiliency and then bringing that back to the business to drive prioritization cross-functionally, that has been the most beneficial part of driving value for our business this year. And so that's kind of my mindset moving forward, because I don't think this is over, right? Not just from a pandemic, but as we see commodities continuing to surge and supply chains consistently at risk, resiliency is going to be the number one thing to drive value for our organization.
Very insightful, Rachel. I appreciate your comments. You said two key words that just popped out, resiliency and risk. I think that's absolutely agree 100%. Risk management becomes the role for supply chain and procurement. It's not just about getting the lowest cost, it's making sure we have some assurance of supply, right?
And it's not in isolation, right? So that's the
Right.
other thing. It's one thing if a procurement person sits down at a table and says, this is my priority. It's another thing to have that then focused across the business so that your business managers understand that risk and, hey, do we switch focus from this to that? It means, does your customer supply chain team say, hey, there's a risk in the supply chain. We're going to load this DC heavier than this DC, right? It's end to end. It's to say, hey, do we really need to implement our SAP upgrade right now, or do we delay that, right? So it's really making sure that the risks are clear and aligned across the entirety of the organization, not just within procurement, not just within supply chain.
Great, love that. Let's move on to Louis. I think when we talk about resiliency and risk management, it comes down to, perhaps this is just my opinion, I think execution is important. It makes the difference for businesses to deliver value to stakeholders. But it's also key to procurement that we do, I think, the necessary strategy development up front. So I wanted to ask Louis, how do you balance those activities so that procurement spends the right amount of time building strategy versus that tactical firefighting?
Yeah, so, when I got into this profession, something that I realized very quickly is that I would say at least 80% of our profession, and maybe it's changed a little bit, that number, but at least 80% of our profession spends most of their time fighting fires throughout the day. It's this went wrong, this needs to be done yesterday. And a lot of the time it's self-inflicted, unfortunately, and it's because we don't have upfront processes in place. And it's not really our fault. We don't have the practical knowledge within our profession yet, because we are relatively new compared to something like sales or finance, where processes have been developed. And just one of the key concepts that I've tried to really nail down to myself is figuring this out. Like, I want to flip the funnel upside down. I don't want the funnel to be a little work up front. We leave the contracting just to the lawyers. We'll leave the SOW to the stakeholders. We'll leave, everything to these other departments, and then get done with this deal. And now we're fighting these fires from this deal. And it's taking so much of our time that we are now doing the same thing with the other deals because we don't have the time to go and do the strategy, right? So you got to break that chain. And when I look at a procurement process, I look at it generally, scope of work, RFX, negotiation planning, contracting, and supplier performance management. But supplier performance management is actually happening from the beginning. And that's one of the things that we need to start putting our heads on. And I call it supplier performance management. I don't call it supplier relationship management, because that came off of CRM, and having a good relationship is good. But if I have a good relationship with a supplier and they're not doing a good job outside of having a good relationship, I don't care much about that relationship, truthfully. And I'm one of the nicest guys in the world. I'm just saying that we need to really focus on the performance aspect, not the relationship aspect. That's CRM, and that, we took that from sales, and we're not sales. So the whole idea and concept, right, is to understand what our supply base might look like, right? There's very specific things within this end-to-end process that I've just mentioned that I've implemented that has helped me. I take a lot more time up front, but I spend a lot less time on the back end, because by the time the contract is signed, everybody knows what kind of performance, and we as procurement professionals, we get hired to purchase performance results. We don't get hired to purchase goods and services. Anybody can purchase goods and services. That's not why we get hired. We get hired to purchase performance results. So when I get done with a contract, I need myself, my stakeholders, and my supplier to understand what the performance results that we purchased just were. If we don't get that, what's going to happen, how it's going to look on a continuous improvement basis, what the expectation is going forward. And not only going forward, because I generally let suppliers know what sort of KPIs we're going to be looking at when I go out to RFX, because they should, because we don't do that normally. We set KPIs later and it creates another fire, right? So it's always fire after fire after fire. So for me, I can't answer the question that simply because I've created certain processes in each stage of what I'm talking about. And this is kind of what this book that I've been working on for a while actually goes to. But the idea is that we have to flip the funnel upside down as a profession. We cannot have bad contracts, bad scopes of work and specifications, leading to bad RFXs, not working with potential suppliers from an innovative and strategic standpoint, giving them a scope of work and saying failure to comply will lead to bid disqualification. We can't do stuff like that up front, because when we do, 80% of our time is going to be spent fighting fires. And then, you know what, the interesting thing is we're at such a point where people are getting awards for fighting fires that were created because the processes initially were not right? So that's the kind of situation that we're in. You shouldn't necessarily get an award for fighting a fire that was created because you misstepped, right? That's not. You should be rewarded for the fires never coming up because you did all the due diligence and work right out of the gate. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but yeah, it encompasses a lot. It's one of the biggest questions, like how do you get a seat at the table, right? It's like that question. And they actually are intertwined, because if you're working on strategic activity 80% of the time and not fighting fires, you'll have a seat at the table and people will love you. So, yeah. You know, it kind of goes hand in hand, right? So that's kind of just my take on it.
Yeah, no, I think you answered it perfectly, Louis. How do you get a seat at the table? Deliver value. That's how you get a seat at the table. You don't demand a seat at the table because you're any other reason. I think the most enlightening part of your answer that I liked was that there's 3 steps, but it's the same data. It's the same answer each time. What are the business requirements? So you're doing some internal work. What are the list of things that are important to the business to be happy with the supplier that is going to be selected and implemented? The second thing is the selection criteria for the RFP process. That should be the business requirements, the same thing you just developed internally. And then the third thing, that KPI measurements of supplier performance should be the same exact list of what the business told you they needed, that you validated, that you went out to bid on and made selections and negotiated against. You're right, there should be no surprises after the contract, how they're gonna be measured. So I love your answer, perfect. Thanks for that, Louis. Let's go back to Sneha. I wanted to circle back and talk about, Louis talked a little bit about collaboration to develop those business requirements. I wanted to talk about collaboration, Sneha. Can you share a few points on how collaboration with different functions enable supplier engagements?
For sure. And, Louis said a very great point, which is getting the seat at the table. I think the pandemic especially brought us to the limelight even more. This whole function has gained a lot of traction and people really understand overall what supply chain is. Trust me, those silly questions are not coming anymore because you have tons of people who probably understands this whole chain and how much value we belonging to this profession really provide to any business. So yes, procurement definitely saw actually a bigger seat at the table, especially during pandemic. What Rachel mentioned was a risk, which is huge. Oh my God, like Rachel, didn't you see this whole aspect of evaluating risks when it came to a strategic supplier just gained so much visibility during pandemic, and how important it is now to have our systems, our processes more, making it, I don't know, pandemic proof. I don't think we will get there so soon, but maybe someday, and making it more resilient. But yes, coming to, collaboration, being in procurement and having work having relationships with my suppliers. What I have always genuinely, authentically felt is I am also a representative of my suppliers here at my company. So, when there are issues, when there are, say, quality issues, for example, and then it is very easy to come on and immediately start a process and holding our suppliers accountable. But what I have always tried to do is making sure that the process is followed through. While I am representing my supplier, I'm also, of course, a big representative of my business. We are all trying to run a business here, but getting to the root cause, understanding, and making sure that the cause is really the message is sent and heard by every single team out there is important, because that also gives a sense of, I would say, ownership, and also that respect that our supplier, who is also a key partner in running our business, gets. So that is I would say a sentiment that is something that I hold very dear to. And I make sure that when I'm working with my teams, they understand that they are not just a supplier or vendor, they are our business partners. They help us add value to our customers, and they are key part of this. So we are not disintegrated. We are integrated in delivering value to our customers. Now, collaboration with cross-functional teams is huge. And that's why I started this discussion with this is, okay, I'm not even going to start with marketing, because Sarah Scudder is a huge, has tons to say that. And anyone here who's following her knows the importance of that. But I'm going to talk about sales. So, when there's the sales teams, they need to understand the value of our suppliers, of the whole procurement team. They can, the pain points that they see on the field could easily be translated. And there's tons of value that we could firsthand generate for them, instead of them going through multiple channels and then the message being relayed to us. So collaboration with sales team, accounting teams, finance, every single function needs to work together with procurement and just see the wonders and see the value that we can add to the business goals overall, not just in terms of revenue, but risk management and delivering value and quality and all of that. So as I said, I start with that sentiment, having the processes set in place, setting the expectations, not only with our suppliers, but with our stakeholders internally as well, would really help propagate the value together to the business. So collaboration is key, but at the same time, making sure the cross-functional teams understand the value that we are bringing, and what we really stand for, and how, know more about our suppliers is very important.
That's very interesting. You talked a little bit about being representing suppliers. You talked about sales and finance being involved in the discussions and making sure that their expectations are management. What do you think, just kind of a second part of that question, Sneha, what do you think about this idea of procurement being an advocate for suppliers?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I should have used that word. We are. So, I have seen this, like, we do treat many industries do treat our suppliers as secondary, and that should change. That should absolutely change. You have to understand that they are running a business and they are critical, just any other function that functions within the company. They're as critical to our customers as an operations manufacturing is, as the logistics team is. So we are the advocate, and we are somewhere representing. So if I am representing a set of commodity and my suppliers, I am standing there. I need to understand my suppliers' processes, what is the value that they are adding to my business. And in the meetings, in the leadership meetings, in the meetings where we are discussing KPIs, supplier performance, customer pain points, quality issues, I should be able to speak on their behalf when they are not present, and be able to turn the conversation into a positive game than actually playing the blame game process. So that goes on a lot, especially it is whenever a quality issue pops up, it's easy to just defer it to our suppliers and okay, so, let's start bringing them in and, start that process. I always try to get to the root cause internally and do as much as we can within our company before, and also make sure that everyone understands what we are doing, why we are doing, and not just start with our supplier that, okay, yeah, it will be their problem. So that sentiment has to change.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I think in some industries, not manufacturing, where your company is adding most of the value, when you're in, say, a distribution model, the function that's adding the most value is your supplier, because they're creating the products that you're selling. So to have that advocate and to have the sales team understand what they're selling, the value that your suppliers are providing, that's key and that's important. Very, very interesting. Let's move on to Audrey on a similar topic, but switching to your kind of functionality, your huge background in logistics, supply chain. It's been in the news a lot. We've heard about, container shortages when we're talking international freight, ocean freight. There's container shortages. There's international lanes that some of which have quadrupled in price. There's capacity constraints. We see dozens, if not hundreds, of ships backed up at some ports. Los Angeles is a good example, and there's other ports that have some issues. I'm curious, what is so unique about this function of logistics that creates so many challenges, particularly nowadays?
I love this question. Yeah, I mean, the thing with logistics is sort of the group or the people who are responsible for making something happen when they haven't necessarily been involved in the decision-making process up to that point. So a lot of the projects that I see, our procurement team, our salespeople have made commitments and project management decisions that then trickle into, and not wholly without collaboration. It depends on the company you're working with. I'm aware of the locations that we're shipping to, the feasibility of import and export that we can pull off. But yeah, in some cases, we're making these commitments to customers or building these projects that I have no control over the vessel availability between Shenzhen and Rotterdam. I, can't control the offload conditions between, the stevedores at LA, at Long Beach, and the chassis situation and how they've designed their ports to function, which seems to be a bit of a sticky situation sometimes that doesn't happen at other ports, but I have to ship into LA because why would you ship somewhere else to get to, Arizona or to Los Angeles?
Right.
So I think it's, the aspect of our role is we're working in an environment that is very much determined by other people. And we're trying to facilitate projects, to meet customer expectations, to meet our own kind of internal team expectations. But, when you have 3 years ago, say in 2019, 2018, there's kind of a rhythm and a routine to the environment.
Right.
Or to the market. So if I was shipping goods, from Shenzhen to Los Angeles, I know that August is going to be busy. If I want to move an air shipment, I'm going to skip September because Apple iPhones buy up all that space in September. It gets very expensive. And I just reiterate to my teams, like, just don't. November air shipping, don't do it. Anything pre-Chinese New Year, the vessel's going to get rolled. Book earlier, the vessel's going to get rolled. It happens. This is what happens at Chinese New Year. Going into the pandemic, with everyone at home, we can see that more people are buying. So we shift, our entire economies have shifted to facilitate people being at home and people shopping, which is amazing. It's great. I love that we're doing extra orders and that, we're busy and I'm happy to have my job and keep working. But when no one's spending on travel and experience and everybody's buying facial rollers and gua sha, massagers and eyebrow gels, it means that I need more space and more capacity, but of course everybody's buying Peloton bikes and, patio furniture. So they also need space. So now routes that were fairly consistent or, seasonally affected, it's just a mess. And so I think from the challenges that you have being in logistics and trying to run a supply chain is, it's like, what can you plan for? Congestion in August, the Chinese New Year process, if you order from over there, holidays in Europe in August. Okay. What can you plan for in a pandemic? Chaos. And then what are things that you can control? Not a lot. So it's certainly an interesting time to be in this. And I think the best advice I can give is, I don't take any of this personally. If I miss a boat, it's not my fault. It is, so accepting that there's a level of, just a lack of control and doing what you can do. And this year for me, it's communicating. So for my team, I knew in November, this was going to be another tough year, jumped on the staff meeting, kind of outlined what we expected to happen. I honestly didn't expect the cost to remain 5 times the price and for it to be this chaotic at this stage in the year. But here we are, and just keeping them when they have projects that are coming up and reminding them that it's challenging. We can do what we can do. And just, if I can give them enough information, they can relay that to the customer, and just keeping on top of those expectations. Right.
Right. Absolutely. It's a great comment that there's certain things beyond our control. And that the best we can do sometimes is consider the timing of things that you mentioned, seasonality. I'm very much aware that we're an hour into this discussion. I do want to get through to the last panelist, but I have a real quick follow-up for you on that. The fact that, everything we just said, when you're looking to hire some of these service providers, whether it's a freight forwarder or a carrier, a broker, whatever the case may be, what are some of the values that stand out? What expectations are you trying to manage internally as well?
Yeah, I think each company has to manage it differently. And I think we have to, and this goes back to some of the things we deal with in supply chain, or that we've learned between just-in-time supply chains versus just-in-case supply chains. There's a lot of conversation about nearshoring, sure-shoring, offshoring. I think as a person who works at Orchard and knowing what Orchard's customers expect, I hire based on, I hire supply vendors, 3PL brokers who understand that timing is key. Timing is the key for us. The lowest price is not my, that's not going to click me in. It's like the communication piece, being able to express as quickly as possible what's going on when there's changes, and timing. If we can get creative, if rail isn't there, so what's an option here. Right. And then also being really kind of fastidious about compliance and delivery, managing deliveries. So I'm based in Toronto. I'm shipping into 16 countries. I can't personally see or monitor or see and personally deliver everything that we're doing. So I have to trust my 3PL and their agents and their employees, to take care and be fastidious really on, that things are being packed or getting to them and being delivered to the customer in the way that we expect. So what Lewis was talking about earlier, performance management, really keeping on top of, did you deliver this? On time, but did you deliver this in the way that our customer expected? Making sure they have those, I need it to be on this pallet, no overhang, all of those details up front. Right. That's a shopping feature. So when I'm talking or hiring a new 3PL or when I'm having, have a situation with a vendor that's an issue, that's what I'm coming back to. It's, we expected this was outlined. This is what happened. Can you, this has to be fixed or adjusted, because for us, the emphasis, like I say, when it's not timing and as fast as possible, it's that, that meticulousness and in following what our customers expect. And not only because we get chargebacks, but also because that's just the level of customer service that we have at Orchard, is to make it seamless, to make it, to make that end mile as wonderful as possible.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Audrey. I want to move to, and by the way, I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat group, a lot of questions that I'm probably not going to be able to get to, but I love it. Larry, thanks for your comments. Maria, Ken, I see your comments are fantastic. I want to jump real quick to Rachel and talk about this concept of leverage, procurement levers specifically. So Rachel, what leverage is, procurement lever is most often underestimated when it comes to closing deals, to negotiating contracts, and getting ready to execute on some sourcing events?
Yeah, so when I'm looking at leverage, one of the areas that I see that is most underestimated is really about mission and clarity of mission. So when I look at, what we're trying to do as a company, being super, super clear about, what our long-term goal and ambition is and what our long-term mission is really something that drives a lot of leverage. I could talk to you all day, every day. And actually, I open most of our top to top discussions discussing about our LEED Platinum certified factory in the south side of Chicago that has on-site bottle blowing to eliminate shipping empty containers around the Chicago area. I could talk to you about our wind turbine and our solar trees in the greenhouse on the top of our factory that allow our factory to run on 95% renewable energy. I could talk to you about how the fact we picked that location because it was an area of need. It was in desperate need for jobs, right? We actually eliminated it as a food baron. Southside Chicago was a food baron, believe it or not, until our company invested there, had more companies join the area. So absolutely incredible for us to be able to talk about the mission, not only sustainable wise in terms of our products, but also what we're trying to do for our communities as well. It also goes to us, investing in groundbreaking technology. When we push the bounds for one of the first ocean plastic bottles in the market, we talk about 100% PCR in our PET bottles that have been from day one, and we've invested heavily in creating resiliency around that. And when we start talking about that, I think it really instills confidence within our suppliers about we're willing to invest in new technologies. We're willing to be the first. We're willing to partner. And really, who wouldn't want to be a part of that, right? So we found that by really invoking this conversation around mission and what we're trying to do has really excited our partners and has actually brought them to the table with options, with things to do accelerations that they would never have offered anybody else, with prioritization, right? Through this pandemic, we've seen that partnership and that alignment to our mission has really been critical to the success with our suppliers. And then going to what Sneha said about advocating, knowing that our suppliers are aligned to our mission actually makes it much easier for me to then communicate back internally when we do have a disruption or an issue or a supplier needs something for us. Being able to sit down at the table and say, you know what, guys, they're on this mission with us, and this is what they need in order to help support that has been absolutely critical. So whether you're talking internally or you're talking about external negotiations, really that mission and being able to communicate that is really key and has driven a ton of success and leverage within my business.
Wonderful. I love that idea of focusing on the mission, long-term, constantly communicating what is important to your company as far as a long-term mission, and then aligning with suppliers that want to support you be successful in that mission. That is so key. So we talk about folks that, we've already talked about Elon Musk, but, Bezos, the same thing, the same way with Amazon. His focus was 100% on his customers and not the competition. Let's focus on adding more value into our customers, and don't worry about the competition. And you create this flywheel effect of continuously adding value and then growing your customer base. And then,
to that, have a mission, right? That also not only speaks to your suppliers, but also to your customers, right? The number of times that suppliers have asked, hey, can we showcase your product in this competition? We want to partner with, that is such a huge point of leverage that is all earned, right? It's nothing that I have to pay for. It's nothing that the suppliers have to pay for. By investing in us as a customer, they then have the opportunity to showcase our products as part of their portfolio, which is absolutely huge.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for that, Rachel. I want to move on to Luis. I'm sorry, Louis, and then we're getting close towards the end, and we'll kind of wrap it up on that. So, Louis, you talked a little bit about how critical those upfront steps are. You know, the design, specifications, scope of work. I know you're in that very, very difficult, one of those difficult indirect spaces that deal with facilities management, facilities maintenance, construction. So I know that is tough, and how valuable it is to be upfront at the design phase to really add value. So I wanted to talk about this kind of being efficient in processes and being quick to deliver some value, and talk about contract cycle times, for example. Sometimes contracting drags on and on and on before you can go through multiple red lines. So I wanted to talk and agree to what we talked about before about what are those things that are going to be measured success. So I want to talk a little bit, get your thoughts on how do you cut that cycle time of getting to a closed deal ready to execute.
Yeah, so when it comes to contracting, it's important for procurement professionals to understand what contracts are meant to be and what they're not meant to be, because to legal, and legal's a great partner to have, but to legal, contracts are a seatbelt. They're kind of an overlying seatbelt. To us, they need to be viewed as a performance agreement to an extent, right? So, ways to cut the cycle time though, and that's a little bit of a different question. I tell everybody, I like to give practical advice. I like to give advice that if I give it to you and you go and you try to do it next week, I believe that it will significantly change the way that things are being done. So one very good tip that I'll give that I implemented, and it works almost all of the time, is we all have these situations where we send the suppliers the contracts and they're good, seem like they're going to be good service, good price. They seem like they're going to be a good supplier, but they have all these red lines on some ridiculous things. And then you send it to legal, and then it gets lost for a while. And then, it slows down the process. What you should do, and what I do all the time, is when I'm doing an RFX, I will make part of my criteria on who I'm going to choose, my supplier selection criteria, a pretty good portion of it, maybe 20%, 15-20%, number of red lines on contract. Now, when you do that, what happens is suppliers are not going to redline that contract.
I love it. I love it.
Really, really important to them. And then you use that for negotiation down the road. You start to figure out how important that is. And there's ways, I have certain matrices that I use to kind of leverage those importances, but they're not going to redline a contract for things that they can't go to their upper management initially. So, normally what will happen is somebody who's maybe a little lower level is going to redline as much as they can based on their policies. They're going to send it back to you. You got to fight them back. You send it back to them. Then they go up to their upper management. They're going to go to their upper management initially if 20% of their supplier selection is on the red lines, right? So you are cutting the cycle time for sure, because you're really only going to be talking about things of very important significance, and you're understanding what the pre-negotiation planning is going to look like. So for anybody listening, just do that and see what happens. There's other things that you can do, but that's one of the best practical things that I can say, on this panel, to be short. It's pretty effective. It's a pretty effective strategy.
Fantastic. I love that. It's often forgotten. I've seen it used before, but the contract and then counting the red lines, being part of the negotiation, being part of the selection criteria even, is brilliant. I love that. So thanks for that, Louis. So I wanted to, realizing that we're an hour and 15 in, I wanted to wrap it up. There are tons of other questions I wanted to go through. So I wanted to encourage our listeners, whether they're listening live or whether they're listening later to the recording that's going to be available soon, I'm sure, to please reach out to the panelists and connect on LinkedIn. including myself, would be thrilled to connect offline. There's tons of questions. In fact, I probably will engage with the panelists offline because I got a lot more questions. I want to learn some more. And so thanks, Rachel, Audrey, Sneha, Lewis. Appreciate your insights. Thanks to our hostess, Sarah. Thanks to our sponsors. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
All right, Ernie, thank you. And Lewis, we did get a question that came in the chat that I want to ask you really quickly. The person, Dan, wants to know, do you include the contract with the RFPs?
Yeah, so I used to not, and then I started to realize that it's a good idea to, because what you do is what you lay out in that contract is you lay out what you're expecting of them as well in terms of KPIs, you can say, and then, you know, if they fail to meet certain, so if you do that, and sometimes you can't based on your organization, if you can't, you can still kind of work with this, but it's not as effective. You're being really proactive, because if you have a good contract in place and they don't want to redline it because it's part of the supplier selection process, it means that you're probably going to get a pretty good deal in terms of the performance and everything else. So yes, I used to not, and I don't mind doing that. And that's what most of us do in this profession. We don't send the contract till after. Normally the supplier has a good idea if they got the business and now they really want to, they really have some good negotiating on that red line. If you send it with the RFX, it tends to be a lot more effective. You're being proactive with the contracting. Things can always be a little adjusted here and there, but if you can, absolutely send the contract with the RFX to all the potential suppliers. And it's a lot more important because they don't feel like they have your money yet, and now they're redlining, but they pretty much already have your money.
All right, thank you for that. So as we close out, I want to give each of the speakers, including Ernie, to share a closing thought. So if there's a tip or takeaway that you would like to leave with the audience today that's with us, keep in mind that this is being recorded and will be shared with the broader procurement community after as well. So Rachel, let's start with you. Closing thought for the day.
Yeah, so one of the questions that we didn't get to is really about, when building a team, right? Like, what am I looking for? And this kind of just speaks to like my general thought on procurement, and listening to all these great procurement professionals has really solidified this again in my mind is when we talk about procurement, it's really about owning your style, owning your procurement style. The way that I negotiate is going to be very different from Sneha and Lewis. And you really just need to own your style, own your strengths, own your company's strengths, right? And really use that to your advantage to create leverage, to create value. So my top tip is really understanding your style in procurement, and then how does that bring value to your organization? So that would be my one tip for the day.
Awesome, thank you. Sneha with the cool background, you're up next.
Sure. First, again, thank you so much for having me. I learned a lot. Thank you so much, all the panelists. So much to learn from you. Looking forward to connecting with you offline as well. There was another question that we did not get to, was diversity, which I am a huge, huge advocate of. What I would really say, the first thing and foremost thing is, please write your own job descriptions if you are hiring. Please take the time to write, be realistic, and please look for diversity. Bring that to your table, be inclusive, and see wonders happen. It does work. So huge advocate of that. And sustainability and circular supply chains is not a far-fetched goal. Take those baby steps. I promise you it will happen. Would love to connect with anyone who is interested and would love to chat more. And sustainable packaging is something that Sarah Scudder is pioneering right now. So I am watching you, following you, stalking you everywhere you go.
Sustainable packaging is here to stay. I just hosted a Clubhouse room this morning and we had about 30 people. Really, really cool, exciting things happening with hemp and mushrooms and trees being used to make completely biodegradable materials. So definitely, if you are selling a product and use packaging, definitely tune in and keep sustainability in mind. Audrey, you're up next.
Okay, wow. I mean, what Sneha and Rachel just said was fabulous. But I think for all of us, yeah, it's that it's knowing, not necessarily following what other people are doing if it doesn't fit. I think lots of people are great examples out there, but ultimately having that understanding of your business and of yourself is kind of key. And the other thing would be, for me, I think the best thing that I do, the best thing that I can do, I can't know everything about everything. And I wouldn't pretend to, but just making the connections with such a variety of different people. So, I mean, like I said, I have done some procurement in the past, but staying connected and learning from people in procurement, people in accounting, people in taxes, people in all different parts of the world, that learning from different voices and different people in different roles. I can't exist in like a logistics bubble with logistics friends, right? And so, yeah, being able to learn and be curious about what other people are doing and what's happening kind of in the market. I think that makes me, better able to see what's maybe coming up and maybe be, create some resiliency and some proactivity. But yeah, collaboration, understanding people and understanding yourself, I think is, it's what helps me. So hopefully that will help other people.
So Audrey, speaking of bubbles and spacesuits, can you share with everyone what your dream job is, please?
Oh my gosh. So if I have always wanted to go to space, and now that it sort of seems to be on the horizon with the rise of space tourism, but I'm, not as wealthy as Elon, so I can't necessarily grab a ticket to stay at a space hotel that's coming in 2025. But if they were looking for, a space supply chain manager or logistics for space, it's right here. I'm right here. So anytime.
Audrey's foregoing house purchasing to go to space. So she is super serious about this.
Yeah.
I'll come visit you. I'll go next.
Audrey, thanks for being with us, and love to see all of our Canadian friends on the call today. Yes. I think we had a really good turnout supporting Audrey, so love to see that. Louis, closing thoughts.
Sure. So first off, Sarah, I wanted to thank you for inviting me. I really, really appreciate it. Ernie, great job. And to all the fellow panelists, I learned so much. It's an honor to be on the stage with such bright minds in the profession who also share a passion for it. Since it seems like, I think everybody else kind of mentioned the one question that they didn't get to go over because we're having so much fun. Kind of just going quickly to like scope of work, spec development, which was kind of going to be one of the small things that I was going to touch upon. Just very quickly, when your stakeholders say that they want to use certain manufacturers or they're getting very specific with things, you might just want to ask them, well, why and what are we actually trying to do? And when you go out to RFX, always let suppliers know the application of what exactly you're trying to do, what the goal is, what is the performance result, what are you actually trying to do? Not what you want to buy, what do you want to accomplish? And give them your bid and then say, quote me 2 ways. Quote me the way that I gave you the specs, the exact way, please 2 spec, and then quote me how I should have asked you the question. And if you do that, your cost savings is going to go up 30, 40% in 1 year. You're going to be a rock star. And maybe that wasn't the way things were done before, but you're going to start to tell everybody, hey, this is how we need to do things. So I just wanted to mention that quickly, but thank you everybody for having me. I wish this was a 4-hour conversation. It was so refreshing listening to everybody. So thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a great day.
And for those of you on Clubhouse, Louis is super active, so make sure you follow him on Clubhouse as well. And one of the things that I love about Louis is he does his RFPs in a really innovative and progressive way. Instead of asking 200 canned questions, he believes in very short RFPs that have open-ended questions that allows suppliers to provide innovation and creative ideas. So I hope that more people continue to adopt that process, because I think the procurement community will get a lot more innovative solutions by posing RFPs that way. So awesome work. Ernie, closing thoughts from you.
Oh my gosh, this was such a great panel. It was so much fun. Some of the things that were just talked about and some of the questions I wanted to get to, we didn't get to, and that's some of it was around diversity and inclusion. And I'm not talking about just your own teams. I'm talking about supplier diversity and inclusion. And I'm not talking about doing diversity and inclusion just for very important social justice reasons. It's about, as well, it's about when you have diverse teams, you have better solutions. You have diversity of thought and approach to problem solving, and you just come up with better solutions in general. That's just something we learned long ago in business school. We got some really great practical advice. We got some really great strategic ideas to help procurement add value. You know, Lewis talked about asking why. I'll just add, and I think he'll agree, ask why 5 times. Because you'll ultimately get to the root issue 10 times, Lewis. And I have some good news for Audrey that SpaceX is now accepting Dogecoin. So start collecting now, and then you're going to have enough. So I'll leave it on that. Thank you very much.
Alrighty, thank you so much to all of our speakers today. Ernie, thank you so much for moderating. Definitely recommend reaching out and connecting with Ernie on LinkedIn. He's a great leader and innovator in the space, so somebody you definitely want to have in your network, and he's super active in the Procurement Foundry as well. So Ernie and Sneha, Audrey, Rachel, and Lewis, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to thank our 4 sponsors. Again, they are the reason we're able to host this event every single month, and they allow us to provide it at no cost to the community. This was recorded, so we'll be sharing this out on social media and via email to the 140 so people that are registered for our event series. So you will be getting a copy of this recording if you want to listen again and or share it with your colleagues and network. And then join us again June 8th, 10 to 11:30 Eastern Time, 1 to 2:30, 10 to 11:30 Pacific Time, 1 to 2:30 Eastern Time on June 8th for our next series. We'll have a new moderator and a new group of speakers to get new perspectives and insights. So with that, everyone have a wonderful afternoon.